This meeting to order. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Member Rothenberger?
Here.
Member Thompson?
Here.
Member Kurzman?
Here.
Chair Stevens?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great. Before we start, I would like to congratulate our assistant clerk for employee of the, was it quarter?
Yeah,
Last quarter.
thank
So
you.
thank you for all of your hard work in supporting us in this committee. So
My pleasure. Thank you.
And that was long every day.
yes.
Thank you.
First up, presentation beach activity report. Oh, also like to introduce, we have a new board liaison, Camden Mills. Like to acknowledge Ayako and all of her contributions over the years, and welcome Camden to the Beach Stewardship Committee.
Thank you. I'm glad to join. And yes, I'd also like to thank Ayako and the information she's helped provide me to try and bring me up to speed so I can be a smooth transition as I serve as your staff liaison moving forward. So this item for our beach activity report, this is, as I understand, an activity report that we provide every quarter that just provides an updates on weddings, public meetings, special events, cleanups, as well as sheriff violations. In this report will be from April 1st through June 30th. So a copy of that was included in the agenda packet. One item I'd like to note was at the time that it was published, we didn't have an update quite yet from Keep Pinellas Beautiful on the cleanup events. So I'd like to share that information today. From April through June, there was a total of 13 events with 221 volunteers. Over 486 volunteer hours were served. And they collected just under 900 pounds of litter, and over 12.5 miles of beach was improved with those cleanup events. Thank you.
Great. Moving forward, approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any modifications to the agenda?
I would like to suggest that the customer use conversation be moved up to before item A, because I think it would be important to understand customary use as we discuss the ordinances that are on the agenda. I think that would be useful information if we move that up.
Any objection to that?
So move 5E to 5A.
Yep. And it's my understanding of B and, let's take a look here. Now, originally A and B, the goal of today was for them to introduce both of them to us, solicit public feedback, and then for us to hear all that and then schedule two separate workshops that will be scheduled after this via what's the tool called Doodle, for us to meet each one so we have time to really sink our teeth into it. That's the plan.
So you're saying this isn't, today is not the day to be diving into these ordinances?
If you read it, they're not asking for this in there. They would like to do a separate workshop for each one. And then I was going to say at the end of the current B, we would talk about the process for the workshops and how we'd want that. Do we want any additional information provided for the workshop to prepare us? And then what process would we go through for each to set us up for success? And I believe at the end of each workshop, they would have our feedback and they would come back to us with a, dare I say, a final draft that we would then vote to propose to move forward in the process. I believe the turtle light, once that was done, it would have to go to planning. And then the beaches, the behavioral beaches one would go straight to commission. But in my understanding of it, that would give us more time for each one to just focus on that. Does
But
that,
it would come back to us before it goes to the
Yes.
commission, even the behavioral one.
yes, for us to vote to say yes. That's my understanding. Camden, is that correct?
Brandon, you confirm that? Yes.
Yes. Everyone okay with that?
So to clarify my request, I'm not asking that we change A, B, C, and D's order. I'm just trying to make E sort of be A0.
That's fine. Yeah.
And leave the other letters alone.
So we'll move that up. Okay. Any other changes? Do we, so can I have a motion for the updated agenda?
I'll make that motion to follow the updated agenda.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Member Thompson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kurzman?
Yes?
Member Rothenberger?
Yes.
Chair Stevens?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Next is to review the August 20th, 2025 agenda. Minutes. Do we have to do minutes?
Yes.
Yes, that's next.
It's after
I got it.
comments.
So we'll move to audience comments. This is general comments. If you have any comments, please fill out a card and present to the clerk. At the end of each action item, we will stop and ask for specific comments for each item.
I forgot one item. I see John Bishop, and it says he's talking. Is he on the agenda?
Item D, for an update on Pinellas County Emergency Beach Nourishment Project. We were going to briefly give an update on Upham, and John would be available for any questions if needed. Thank you.
Clerk, do we have any general comment requests?
No general.
Okay.
Do we want to take them first?
And we'll move approval of the May minutes. Any changes to the minutes?
I have one.
Okay.
It's just a typo, I'm not sure how important, but on page 2 of the agenda, section 4A, second paragraph, refers to planning project. It's actually a planting
Oh, good
project
catch.
for the planting of the sea oats and whatnot there up. So that's all I have.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you because of the,
So page 2, section 4A,
okay?
second paragraph, planning project should be planting,
Okay,
as in sea oats
okay,
project.
thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Any,
Yeah, I wasn't here for that meeting.
any changes?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes with the change suggested.
We have a second?
So, second.
Roll call?
Member Rothenberger?
Yes.
Member Thompson?
Yes.
Member Kurzman?
Yes?
Chair Stevens?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. We're going to our new number A, the customary use conversation. City Attorney?
Did we want to take John Bishop and do D first? Since he's here, we could let him go back to work after this report,
I already did.
since we have a guest from the county.
I want to let them hear. Or his request is to let Dr. Bishop give us an update on the new number E.
D.
But
Oh, that's right, the new number.
New number
Okay,
is
right.
the
Sorry.
new E. Is that okay? That
On the beach renourishment project.
is John available now? Yeah. So let's go ahead and do that.
Okay, thank you. So for this agenda item, we wanted to provide an update on the Pinellas County Beach Emergency Beach Nourishment Project. The county has done a great job with some public outreach recently, having 3 separate meetings with presentation, providing some information on that. A copy of that PowerPoint presentation was included in your agenda packet for this meeting. As it relates to the Upham portion specifically, it looks like there'll be about 66,000 cubic yards there and about 2,000 foot stretch of beach. I think the estimated cost for that was around $1.3 million. Gator Dredging will be the contractor working in that area, and the estimated time frame to start is in mid-September to early October. And the sand source for this nourishment will be from Blind Pass. So for that, I'd open it up to any questions, or if Dr. John Bishop has anything he would like to add, we can do that as well.
That's perfect. That was exactly what I would have said.
I've got a few questions. Will this increase or decrease the amount of usable beach for the public on Upham after it's completed?
The beach will extend out. It should extend out beyond the groins that are out there now, the T groins.
Okay.
So it will make the beach wider and have more surface area.
And I noticed that, you know, maybe I'm spoiled, but I remember loving the consistency of our beach and commenting about it. And I was on Upham Beach earlier this week, and I noticed where the water came in, it was still that nice, beautiful sand. But then there's the big cliff up, and where I guess it was filled from some project, and I don't know which project it was, and that's consisting of a whole different kind of sand with crushed shells in it. It's just not the same. And so I'm wondering, you know, where that came from. Was that also from the Blind Pass, or will this Blind Pass sand being on top remedy the whole situation?
Well, I don't know the specific sand you're talking about. Is it on sort of the middle of the beach?
It's from the cliff, you know, then inward to land. I took some pictures, but it's just basically you only see that really pristine sand before what looks like fill. Or maybe
well, this sand source is coming from Blind Pass, so it should be very similar to what's on the beach now. There were some post-storm efforts to put sand back on the beach that took sand that had washed up from the near shore. A lot of that sand was shellier, so it might still have a lot of shells in it from that, but this sand should be more similar to what you're used to coming in from Blind Pass. It's what we put on the beach last time.
That was beautiful stuff. And then administratively, have we now circumvented the erosion control line issues and the getting permissions from the, you know, the properties nearby? Because now I think it's Pinellas that's funding this or doing this work, or what's happening there?
Yeah, so for this one project, Pinellas County is moving forward with a one-time only project to kind of reset the status. We're not circumventing, we're trying to buy more time to get the project in compliance. We don't intend to come back and nourish again without the Corps being involved. So all of the property issues in Upham will need to be taken care of eventually.
So who has that action item? How are we going to make sure we're ready for the next one?
We are working on, we're still working towards getting core policy changed and working to those through those avenues, and we're trying to do what we can to make sure that this project is core compliant.
Thank you.
Excuse me, two things. Can you give us a sense? We're going to start at the mouth of Blind Pass and move south towards Silver Sands. Is that?
It's not going to go in front of the Silver Sands. It'll fill from the Silver Sands north. So the north boundary of the Silver Sands up to the jetty. I can't say for certain what direction they'll work in. In the past, they've usually started at the south end and worked north, but that would be an order of work that we haven't discussed at this time.
And will there be fencing blocking off sections of the beach for the? Can you give us
Yes,
a feel for where that'll be?
Dredging will block off the fence, and people will not be allowed in the construction area where they're placing sand for safety reasons.
Okay. And thank you for putting all this together. I'm looking at the schedule. You've got us starting in next month.
Yeah.
And we're at the top of the list.
Yeah, pretty much. We're working simultaneously. Weeks Marine is the prime contractor, but they have subbed out Upham and Treasure Island to Gator Dredging. So they're going to actually have two different dredges out there working at the same time. Weeks is going to be starting up in the Sand Key area in Indian Shores, and then Gator is going to be starting at Upham and they're going to be dredging Blind Pass and putting that sand on Upham. And they're starting there because there's going to be more sand in Blind Pass than can go on Upham, and then they'll put the remainder on Sunset Beach just to the north. And then they'll go up to Johns Pass and they'll dredge Johns Pass and put that on Sunshine Beach at the north end of Treasure Island. And then they'll put the rest of that down on Sunset. And then any remainder in Sunset will get filled by Weeks from Egmont Shoal when they're done.
Great, excellent, thank you, thank you.
Any questions, Dan?
I'm good.
I have one question, but it's a little off topic. But since we have you here, Dr. Bishop, there was some talk in my communications with Zach about planting of Passagro. And do you know the status of that? You guys put beautiful sand there, and now what can we do to protect that massive investment?
We are just finalizing the scope to get that out to bid so that we can get a contractor to plant that. It's going to be combined with the plantings we're going to do in the other areas. I'm sure they'll plant that one first probably because it's already done. And they can get started on that, but we're combining the scope to fill all of the dunes we're building all the way up to Clearwater. So it'll be one big scope, and then and it should get planted sometime, I would say, early this fall.
Right. And with that, does that mean you're also planning to plant where you're putting new sand in Upham?
No, we aren't planning to put any dunes in Upham, and so we're only planting where we put dunes.
Okay, understand. Thank you.
Yep.
Any, ask for any public comment on this?
I don't have any on
Somebody
this.
raising her hand.
Okay, it was this is item D.
No comment? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bishop. Always good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
That is good news. So we'll go to the city attorney and the use conversation.
Okay. Just a little background on customary use doctrine. So the customary use doctrine deals with the dry sand area of the beach. The area below the mean high water line, which is considered by lay people to be the wet sand area, is subject to the Florida Constitution's public trust doctrine, which allows you to walk that wet sand area, fish the wet sand area. I think the Constitution even says spread nets for the public and for Indian tribes. There was a case, Daytona Beach versus Tony Rama. And in that case, they expanded where you can show recreational use of the sandy area adjacent to the mean high tide, above the mean high tide, has been ancient, reasonable, without interruption, and free from dispute, which is the big kicker. The free from dispute and the ancient are the big kickers, such as a matter of custom should not be interfered with by the owner of the property. So if someone is charged with trespass, a defense to trespass can be the customary use doctrine, which arises from this Tony Rama case. The court in Tony Rama also said that the owner may make any use of the private property which is consistent with such public customary use and not calculated to interfere with the exercise of the right of the public to enjoy the dry sand area as a recreational area adjunct to the wet sand or foreshore area. So in the Tony Rama case, look at things like a beach lifeguard stand or a beach pavilion or a beach use that wouldn't interfere generally with the public's customary use if they could show it was ancient and it was free from dispute. After the Tony Rama case, that was in 1974, jumping in the time machine to 2007, we came to the case Trepanier versus County of Volusia, which qualified the Tony Rama customary use doctrine. And the Fifth District Court of Appeal in that case stated, while some may find it preferable that proof of the elements of custom be established for the entire state by judicial fiat in order to protect the right of public access to Florida's beaches, it appears to us that the acquisition of a right to use private property by custom is intensely local and anything but theoretical. In other words, it's site-specific to each property. The court went on, custom is inherently a source of law that emanates from long-term, open, obvious, widely accepted, and widely exercised practice. It is accordingly impossible precisely to define the geographic area of the beach for which evidence of a specific customary use must be shown, because it will depend on the particular geography and the particular custom use at issue, whether it's walking or something else. And the court said that the determination of customary use on a property requires the courts to ascertain in each case the degree of customary use and ancient use the beach has been subject to. So after that case in 2007, we had Walton County adopting an ordinance in 2016. They adopted a customary use ordinance, and it stated that there would be a 15-foot buffer zone located seaward from the toe of the dune from any permanent habitable structure owned by a private entity that is located on or adjacent to dry sand area of the beach, whichever is more seaward, except as necessary to exercise an existing or future public beach access point for ingress and egress. So they created a buffer zone that basically limited the private use and limited customary use and said you're not going to have customary use on this 15-foot buffer zone. But from 15 feet across this dry sand that's privately owned down to the beach, the ordinance prohibited anyone from impeding or interfering with the public at large on dry sand area of the beach that is owned by private entities for certain specific uses, and they included traversing the beach, sitting on the sand in a beach chair or on a beach towel or blanket, using a beach umbrella that is 7 feet or less in diameter, sunbathing, picnicking, fishing, swimming, or surfing off the beach, staging surfing or fishing equipment, and building sandcastles. So that Walton County ordinance basically authorized the public all across Walton County to do those things on private land, on dry sand area. So that case was challenged. It was a case, I think, Alford, let me get the case name. And then this Alford case went to the Federal District Court of Appeals, or Federal District Court for trial. They had a trial, and the district court ruled that the ordinance could be upheld. While that case was pending in court, the legislature met, and the legislature adopted a new statute, this House Bill 631. That was in the 2018 regular session. The district court ruling that the customary use ordinance was valid was on appeal to the 11th Circuit. The 11th Circuit, after the legislature adopted House Bill 631, directed the district court to remove their opinion because it was moot. It was mooted out by the legislation. So they vacated the district court's order, which put things back in limbo. Meanwhile, the ordinance, the statute required that if the county wanted to adopt an ordinance, it had to seek judicial determinations on each of the properties. So Walton County Board of County Commissioners made a motion to proceed under the statute. They filed lawsuits against 1,197 beachfront property owners. Those beachfront property owners had to go out and obtain lawyers. They all obtained different lawyers. And I know some of the lawyers, and I've spoken with them, who represented some of the beach owners, including David Smolker, who's here in Tampa. After 5 years of litigation, the county had spent tens of millions of dollars on the case. The private property owners have also spent tens of millions of dollars on the case. People got tired of spending money on the case. I think lawyers call it bleeding the other side out, or hemorrhaging money. So much money and effort and time was being spent on this case, and it was also clogging up not only these law firms, that many of them were working on nothing but this, but also the court. And the cases ultimately were set for a 7-week bench trial. They were going to have a trial that was set for 7 weeks. And it was to occur on May 22nd, 2023. But like many cases, the case ultimately settled on the courthouse steps before going to that trial, after being set for trial. The property owners obtained a dismissal with prejudice and a finding that customary use does not exist on their beach for some of them. Other property owners, and that was through motions for summary judgment, where they couldn't establish ancient, and they were able to show it was in dispute. Obviously, if they're in court and disputing it, it's not free from dispute. So that's a very hard hurdle to get past, and it's not adequately, it's hard to define, even if you were to define it in the statute. The other property owners negotiated a settlement agreement allowing the public a 20-foot transitory area for walking and sitting, and a finding that customary use does not exist on their beach. So some property owners won and obtained rulings that their beaches were not subject to customary use. The others settled and said they agreed that customary use was not on their beach, but they would allow in exchange for that a 20-foot area where the public could walk. So this past legislative session, the statute requiring the process to go through the judicial system for determinations on a case-by-case basis, and the process that requires local governments to sue their own property owners was repealed. And that was in Senate Bill 1622. So that had the effect of repealing the Florida statute 163.035 that had this arduous process and required, as I said, counties to sue their own property owners. Basically putting us back to the common law of customary use, back to Tony Rama, and back to the Trepanier case versus County of Volusia, and puts us back to where the court would have to ascertain in each case the degree of customary and ancient use for the beach, and whether it has been free from dispute. So it's back in the courts. The customary use doctrine can be used as a shield, or can be used as a sword. Typically as a shield if someone is charged with trespass on a private beach. A defense to that trespass charge is the customary use doctrine, but it has to be shown in court and proven that whatever they were doing, perhaps walking on the dry sand, has been done free from dispute for many years in that exact location of that particular property that they were walking on. So it has the effect there. Now, if you'll remember, the case that was in the federal district court where they found an ordinance to be valid was vacated because the 11th Circuit found it to be mooted by the legislation, so the 11th Circuit never reviewed that federal district court case, but it's still out there. So one of the things we want to do is be mindful of private property rights, especially when we're talking about an ordinance that would apply across the miles of beach that we have and impact many different property owners. We have been mindful in drafting the ordinance so that it doesn't interfere with private property rights in our legal department review. We may have some things that come up, so we want to pay attention as we go through the workshops and as we go through the hearings. At one point, St. Pete Beach had a customary use ordinance, not as drastic as Walton County, but it had an ordinance. One of the other things to consider is that the beaches, particularly in St. Pete Beach, are complex. The ownership is complex. There are a great many easements that are out there. There are plats. There's a few cases already that are still in court. The St. Pete Beach got dismissed out of one of the cases. There was a dispute between two property owner groups about the use of an access. With that said, because it's so complex, it's very difficult to adopt a customary use ordinance that would apply across the entire beach. So the better alternative from a legal perspective is to allow the common law of customary use to exist. And if we are going to adopt an ordinance, to keep it general, to say, for example, the city of St. Pete Beach hereby acknowledges the existence of the common law right to customary use of dry sand areas of the beach where the criteria for customary use doctrine can be established in the judicial system. And that's, even if you do an ordinance, that's where it would occur. So with that said, I think that allows, it gives you some background, and that does allow us to go forward with the beach turtle lighting ordinance as well as our beach behavior ordinance. And hopefully by knowing a little bit about the background, will help you analyze what you want to do in your beach ordinances.
Thank you. Question for the committee. Do we want to do ask for public comment first and then discuss, or? Okay. Is there any public comment for this topic?
I don't have any.
Please state your name and address for the record, and you have
Excuse me,
minutes.
yeah, excuse me.
You can fill out the card afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Dave Winkler, Suncoast Water Sports, 9540 Blind Pass Road. I would like to thank the city attorney for that voluminous,
It's complicated.
yet comprehensive analysis of that. I think initially the really tone of that was, it's complicated. You know, and the private property owners, I work on the beach every day. I've been in business in St. Pete Beach for 47 years on St. Pete Beach, and I'm on the beach daily. I operate in the areas that your guys are discussing. So I have contractual agreements with hotels to provide services on the beach. I know that their position is they're not going to go away quietly, you know, if we try to take away property rights. So once again, I thank the city attorney, you know, for addressing the overview of the complexity of these issues. And I ask the commission and the stewardship committee to take those into consideration when they're thinking about making ordinances that might be overly restrictive. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes.
Since you've been on the beach a long time, and I think you've shared this with me, but I want to make sure I got it right. If someone, from the public just walked onto a certain part of the beach where you were even doing business, could you in the past kick them off?
Yes.
Or do you need tools to do that, or you were able to do that?
It's been determined as private property, and if we have an issue with someone that is disruptive, we're advised to ask them personally, first to settle down or leave, because really people, the general public does not know how to behave. And, we deal with that on a regular basis. So you can ask them to leave nicely. If not, then you can request the assistance of the sheriff.
That was if they were disruptive, but if people were just like walking across or putting a towel down, was that an issue?
It depends if they were interfering with any kind of the activities that were already licensed on the beach, or, disruptive to guests in any way.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
You betcha.
Any other comments? Open it up to discussion for the committee. Any questions for the city attorney?
Yeah, I've got a couple. It predates this attorney, but I was involved when they did the earlier ordinance in the city, which I like the way you referred to it. Thank you for the whole dissertation, that it was the shield. I think they called it affirmative defense, and it took me forever to find out what that was. But when that statute came out in 2018, there was a provision that you could have a provision by a certain date for affirmative defense, but not a complete customary use ordinance. So the city did that intermediate one because it was the only piece that was carved out in a confusing way in the legislation, so that they could do the affirmative defense one, which we later got rid of due to the Reddington case and other things that were going on. But what I want to understand now is, when I spoke to, for instance, Mr. Twitty, who's the tax assessor, he explained that he only taxes the land where they build on the coastal construction line at one rate. He taxes, or the county taxes, the marshland and wasteland, which is the little short area from the CCL to the actual, just the marshland. And then the entire sandy beach is not taxed to what we would call these private property owners, but he taxes the properties instead as beachfront. And part of the reason for that was, I believe, an understanding of customary use, that many people use the beach, so it wouldn't be fair to tax these people for owning basically the land under the sand. And so that's why I'm trying to understand that a bit. I know nobody wants to lose their rights, but the public also doesn't want to lose their rights. And in looking at something else, sort of related to, seems another piece of legislation, FS 161021 says access or public access, as used in these sections, means the public's right to laterally traverse the sandy beaches of the state where such access exists on or after July 1st, 1987, or where the public has established an access way through private lands to land seaward or the high tide, or waterline by prescription, prescriptive easement, or any other legal means. Development or construction shall not interfere with such rights of public access unless a comparable alternative access way is provided. So even though the whole customary use session was going on, this particular statute seemed to survive. And so I understand the city not wanting to sue or be sued by every private property owner with land under the sand, but it's why the word public beach and private beach scare me so much in our upcoming ordinances, because it then does draw a line in the sand with regard to customary use. And I think it's important that we maintain at least the ability at some stage to decide what to do about customary use, should we ever have to, but at the same time appreciate that when there's a private property owner they actually help provide decorum and do any of the things that even if we rented out, Haram Park to somebody, they'd have the right, even if they don't, own it, to say, no, you can't bring your chair here, or you can't bring your food here, because I have that, quote, franchise. So that's why I'm trying to understand this customary use in conjunction with the ordinances. I don't know if you could shed some more light on it.
Yes, what was the number of the statute you had again?
161.021, it's in the definition section.
161.021. I'm going to pull.
And I had actually sent this to the attorney for, some of the hotels and CC'd you. Even I didn't realize it was
Let me pull it up.
It's in the August.
Yeah, so that's the definition of access or public access. And then 161 also talks about, and the context of it is beach renourishment projects, construction on the beach, development beyond the coastal construction control line. If you go for a permit from DEP and you're in that beach area, there's additional criteria that apply. And the section you read is in the definition, but it impacts, and it's about maintaining access parallel to the beach in the wet sand and any customary use dry sand, but also in almost primarily perpendicular to the beach to allow someone to get from, say, Gulf Boulevard to the water. And it states that there are certain beach access points that arise either through a recorded easement or by what they call prescriptive easement, which may not be on paper, but has been open and notorious and continued on for many years. And you can establish those prescriptive easements even though they're not in writing or recorded. And again, sometimes those arise as a shield if someone is charged with trespass. They bring it up in court as a shield, an affirmative defense, and says, oh, but people have been walking here for 50 years to get to the water. And you'll see many of those cases resulting in what you see on, for example, Longboat Key, where there are gated access points, and it says this access point is for homeowners within a particular condominium only, trying to maintain that as a strictly written private easement for use of that homeowner, as opposed to a public use that anyone can open the gate and go to the water. And it also sometimes results in the closures for a day, 1 day a year, to make sure that they can say, oh, it hasn't been open to the public 365, 24/7 for 10 years. They say, well, it's closed every New Year's morning.
Yep.
To try to prevent that. I think what's important to realize is, yes, it's complicated not only by the customary use, but by all these prescriptive easements, written easements, plats. But it brings to focus what I think that we need to concentrate on as we look at these ordinances to stop from getting too confused. A little framework to imagine this in is that there are two kind of worlds. One is regulating development, and that has to do with land development regulations, how high you can build, where you can build, square footage, floor area ratio, all those land development regulations, and behavioral rules, like if your light bulb goes out, you have to replace it with a total friendly light bulb. It's not really development, but it's maintaining a beach for environmental concerns, versus the customary use doctrine, which is more about property right to exclude people. So that's the primary stick in the property rights bundle that you're talking about with customary use doctrine, is when you have owned property, you have many rights. One that the court considers to be very important is the right to exclude. So if it's my property and you're becoming disruptive or you're interfering with things that are going on, to trespass, to say you're no longer allowed to be on my private property. You're here with my permission other times, but I retain that right to exclude you, or exclude you forever, or exclude all public. That's also there, but for a customary use claim, that's there as well. So when we're looking at the ordinance, we have things like regulating development, regulating the private landowners' private use of their beach for themselves, what they're going to build, and for their guests, where their guests' areas are going to be in terms of land development approvals. And then there's the customary uses, all about behavioral. And so some of the ordinances might overlap in some of these areas. And as we think about public and private, as you were mentioning the words in the ordinance, you want to think what context it's being used in. And you do have the power to regulate development on private land, just like you regulate all the developments that come forward on private land. So if you have a new hotel going up, you can establish setbacks. You have height limitations, floor area ratios, open space requirements. All those requirements you can still do. That's land development regulations. What you can't do is, on the customary use and the behavioral stuff, is open up someone's private land to require them to allow the public to traverse private property. Now, they can allow it if they want to, but you can't force them to accept the public.
But if there has been a customary use in such a manner, then they have lost that right to do that exclusion, correct?
To be determined by the courts on a case-by-case basis if you can establish the ancient custom of that particular use. One use might be walking, another use might be bike riding, and maybe there has been no bike riding, and we often have new uses that come up on the beach, like electric bicycles. When I was a younger man, I was a big windsurfer. Now windsurfing has been replaced by kite surfing. And my surfboards that I used to ride now have skegs that go down and they go over the wave. So there's always new things that are coming up. Some of these new uses will probably be hard to show that they were ancient and that they occurred a long time ago. But walking, I think, walking peacefully across, that might be something that one might establish if they were charged with trespass. But again, from what you heard earlier, most of the time people aren't being trespassed just for walking. They're being trespassed because they're disruptive or interfering with operations.
A complaint I had heard was that, if there was an operation, renting chairs, for instance, that there was a difficulty in getting, someone who just, plunked an umbrella, 5 feet in front, from the public of those chairs. That was a problem that needed to be addressed, probably why they're trying to do this statute now, or this ordinance. But that does establish at the same time that the customary use was that people were able to plunk themselves down in what some people might find inappropriate places and not be removed. So that's why I'm trying to get a handle on this again. And I'm also wondering if we're going to redo our statute now that we have the windows open again, to have not because of what we had before, but because of the new legislation. It would make sense, I think, to reestablish that customary use, what it means.
If we do a statute, I would recommend that we simply adopt the common law of customary use and say that we recognize it. It's very dangerous to go into the territory that Walton County doesn't say, well, you have to establish a 20-foot walkway for the public to go through. That's harder, and that's more subject to challenge.
Yeah, I agree.
The other thing in the behavioral ordinance that we're looking at, staying out of the dunes would now be also a public ordinance that would regulate members of the public and tell them they can't go into the dunes. That doesn't mean that or interfere with the private property owner. The private property owner who owns the land on which those in that area, can say, well, hey, we are doing a planting project here, we're fencing this off, and you can't come on here, and it's our private property, and exclude people from that area. I think that they can work hand in hand, the property right to exclude people, the behavioral ordinance that sheriffs can use to write up somebody apart from whether the property owner's there or not able to call about the trespass, but the sheriff finds someone camped out in the dune area, they can remove them if we have a solid ordinance on those behaviors.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the attorney?
I have a quick one. I know this stuff goes back to Roman days, but the word ancient, how would you describe that today?
That was a big part of the case in Walton County, big part of what they were arguing about. They were going back to the creation of the state,
Okay.
45? I might have it wrong. City of St. Pete Beach, 1957. Prior to that, I imagine we were part of Pinellas County.
I do recall, if I could just add, that when they did the other ordinance, or when they repealed the other ordinance, the words used by the city commissioners at the time was, the beach is public, the beach will always be public. This is only getting rid of the ordinance that was created, due to that process. And that the attorney who had been with the city for a while said that he thought it would not be that hard to establish that our usage, because of the age of Paso Grill, the age of the different communities that were merged together when the four cities were combined, that those all indicated that it would not be that hard to show that ancient usage by the public. So
I think a couple other contexts where it could arise. Recently, there was a application to put a house in the sand dune area on Siesta Key and the Sarasota County government. So they had asked for a variance to put a house where houses are prohibited because of environmental concerns, and then that was denied. But you might imagine someone wanting to put a structure so far seaward that it might interfere with customary use area. And as Tony Ramos says, you can use your private property, but you can't use it in a way that would interfere with the customary use. So it could be used as a sword in that case, where the local government would say, you can't build your house there because of customary use. So they're using it as a sword rather than as a shield to a trespass case. So it can be used that way also on occasion.
So would that also mean that, a wall of chairs, like, just thousands of beach chairs being put out, could that be considered, on both the customary use angle, as well as, of course, if the city has ordinances to control that, but on customary use, this...
Potentially it could arise. If chairs have been there for a long time, it might be an interruption in the ancient use, and it might have problems with free from dispute. The thing to keep in mind there is that you're allowed to regulate through site planning development, and that's different than saying people have to be allowed to walk through here. You're saying we're going to regulate this for environmental reasons, for safety reasons, fire access, emergency access. Those kinds of things are proper. If you're regulating development, and you can do that as long as you're not saying you must allow the public in. You're saying where you can put your stuff is different than saying you have to allow the public to walk through over your property. If the public's been walking over your property for decades, then you can use it as a sword and say, hey, well, you have to continue to allow that area to be free for passage, for say walking, but maybe not for bike riding, or maybe not for other activities that people might try, like electric bikes or things like that.
That you just mentioned that. I mean, when I was researching this also, I saw on the Attorney General's site, their example of a unconstitutional beach ordinance was, I think it was Palm Beach or somewhere out on the East Coast, they had a regulation against no skimboards. And they said, you can't use skimboards anywhere on the beach. And they give that as an example of, well, you can't just say that. You have to say you can't use skimboards over here, over there. But to just make something illegal on its own is not constitutional.
Yep, and skimboards, for people that may not skimboard, you have a skimboard and you're running and you throw it down in the wet sand, and then you go into the wave and come back. So that wet sand area is, again, that public trust doctrine that has the really strong constitutional provision that the public really is allowed to use that area for the public, for any activity. There's another interesting aspect to maybe to draw an analogy that's more drastic than it is here in the West Coast, but in Nassau County and St. Johns County, in Daytona, I'm sure you're all familiar with the car driving on Daytona. So the county says you can drive your car on the beach. You have to go through this access point. You have to sign in. We have speed limits. You have to park here. You can only stay for certain hours. Sometimes they regulate how many cars go there. That has been occurring there probably since cars were invented. So that's probably ancient and customary use and free from dispute. But that doesn't mean that the county or the state, or in that case the federal government, can't regulate that activity under, say, the Endangered Species Act, and say, well, we have sea turtles that nest on this beach, and so you're going to be prohibited from driving during sea turtle nesting season, or you're going to be prohibited from driving at night when turtles are hatching, or even establishing conservation areas where they have to stay out of for turtles or for nesting birds. So there is a regulatory overlay even to the public's customary use that can happen. It's not a defense that you rode your ATV through a bird nesting zone. And you say, well, it's a customary use. People have always been riding ATVs on the beach, and therefore I can ride right through where the black skimmers are. So that would still be a crime, and you can regulate even that activity.
Great examples, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I have one question, then we have a heavy agenda, we'll move on. Can you just discuss your thoughts on how do you manage liability in this, where the public is on, but it's private property, someone trips and falls? And then the lawyers get involved in lawsuits, and now, hey, I have to let them on my property, but they trip and fall, now I'm getting sued.
You don't want to write an ordinance that says they have to let them on their property. You want to preserve their ability to exclude people from private property. You don't want to say you must take people.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ready for the next? Move forward. We're going to B now, so it's the ordinance creating Chapter 95 beaches.
Good morning, Brandon Berry, City Planner. Thank you, Chair Stevens, for introducing this item previously. As mentioned, this is intended to just be an introduction. We would like to ask the committee to set up separate workshops potentially between now and your November meeting. That'll give time for this information to be digested and looked through and discussed, and then potentially bring something back to you for final draft at your November meeting. If it needs more time, it needs more time. We will address it in the future, but this is the first of what will be at least 4 public comment options. We will have the meeting in November or thereabouts. We'll also have 2 readings before the City Commission should this move forward. So just briefly, as mentioned at the community meeting back in July, the proposal is to bring what was previously 1 consolidated document forward as at least 3 ordinances. The first is the establishing ordinance for the beach ordinance, that Chapter 95 that's been discussed for several years. This will focus on behavior, conduct, and public beach permitting.
What's a public beach?
Let's,
Or we're going to address that later?
We'll address that later.
we'll have a workshop for that type of question.
Okay, just trying to understand the scope.
This content has not been significantly modified from the content that was presented in early 2025. I did not attempt to go back and define a certain, I didn't add to the content that you previously left off. I know that there was an ordinance that served as kind of a checkpoint last summer. There was a workshop with the commission. There have been some modifications to this content that was largely more on the commercial regulatory side, but there were some changes to this content. I will try to define those, but the content that's presented in this agenda is likely similar to the draft that you'll be presented at your workshop, should we move forward with that. I did not attempt to make significant modifications. I just attempted to reformat in a way that it's more clear what is being modified in our current code, what's being modified and moved to Chapter 95. This does not address most commercial regulatory and development related standards. That will be forthcoming. It will be subject, of course, we're operating under Senate Bill 180 currently. There are development related standards that may be off the table until 2027, not all, but some. We have not put together any kind of schedule for those modifications at this time. And then, of course, the second item we're discussing today, item C, pertains to marine turtle lighting standards. That is in a separate ordinance, Ordinance 2025-16. So just to broadly summarize this ordinance, this does not cover everything. These are the standards that have already been addressed related to maximum tent sizes, requiring public beach franchise permits for setting up of cabanas tents on the public beach, as we'll get into definitions in the workshop, prohibiting smoking on the beach and unsafe fishing activity, prohibitions on unpermitted fireworks, prohibitions on wild bird, turtle, and manatee harassment, making that declaration through our code, prohibiting micromobility devices and unregistered bikes on the public beach, permitting requirements for organized recreational activities in the public beach, which is something that came up in the community meeting. We'll have to spend some time on defining what those activities are, when they need to be permitted, if that is something that is moved forward. There were items that seemed to be in consensus related to commercial activities, and those were particularly the removal of the front desk registration and the wristband requirements for resort cabana service areas. That's something that's been brought up in past public meetings, public discussions. There seemed to be some consensus on that. That is something we are proposing to address under this ordinance, not the more involved development-related aspects of cabana beach permitting, just removing those requirements, and specifying signage and restroom requirements. The latter is a Florida Building Code requirement. Signage is something we address at Technical Review Committee when these requests come in, but just specifying where signage needs to be located and what it needs to signify, and then specifying penalties for violation of the beach ordinance. So we asked for 4 tasks today. First is just confirming that there is a desire of the Beach Stewardship Committee to schedule a workshop to discuss this content. I believe in past formats you have gone through line by line, section by section. That is our default, but if there's another format that you would like to undertake, we're happy to consider that as well. If there is anything that you feel is appropriate for the scope of this ordinance that hasn't been included, that will not be addressed in other ordinances, is there content that you would like us to bring back, not necessarily with recommendations, but just general, broad, categorical conversations that we need to have at this workshop or potentially a future Beach Stewardship Committee meeting? And then if there is any initial public comment on this, as I mentioned, this is the first of at least 4 public meetings where public comment will be solicited. That's all I have. I'm happy to field questions.
If you don't mind, I think let's do public comment first, and then, I have a couple, or at least one for number 3 that we can communicate, and then we can discuss how do we want to move forward with workshop number 1. Is that okay?
Lisa
Any
Reich?
public-
Are you on this one? No? Okay. We don't.
No public comment? Okay. Back to his, could you put that slide back up? Just so thank you. Let's start with number 3 of anything I'm assuming we all read the material that was sent out. Is there anything anybody else wanted to add it for this conversation so they can prepare for the workshop?
So is there an item here to say the things that, any content for this ordinance that should be removed from this phase? Is that part of number 3 also, or is that a different item?
You can either add or remove, or if there's something you think
Yeah,
shouldn't be put in.
Exactly. I mean, if we can cover things that when I read this through, there are...
If I may, I think it's, if there's something that has not been included,
So
it
we're-
will not be addressed, this is to add it. And then if there's things in there at the workshop, we can debate, have a conversation on removing is how I read this.
Brandon, you've studied this quite a bit, I would imagine. Spent a lot of time on this.
Sure. Yes.
So you probably know this better than anybody else right now.
Well, I mean, it's gone through multiple iterations. I know it's been discussed with this board. It's gone through multiple staffs.
At a high level, are you comfortable with the way it stands right now as far as, segregation, this goes here and that goes there?
I think the formatting work that I've done is consistent with what is logical to present in a discussion format. As in terms of the content of the ordinance, if there are items that the committee has consensus should not be addressed in this ordinance, we're happy to address that at the workshop. What I was hoping to get today was any content that should be included that has not been covered so far.
Do you know of any?
No, I mean, this has gone through a few years. I just,
That's a really good answer.
It's been through, several iterations, several years with the committee. I haven't been involved with all of those, but I believe it currently captures potentially more than what the committee would like it to contain, but I don't know of anything that's been left out at this point.
All right, now that I've had time to think of how to phrase my comment in consistency with item 3.
Oh, I would just have one thing. One thing we might add is what we had talked about with the customary use, a section that just acknowledges and recognizes the common law of customary use in Florida as applicable, and just have a general statement to that effect.
So, go ahead.
That's it.
So, first off, I want to really thank you for the work you did on this. I mean, I have been involved in this through the many iterations back when some of the city commissioners were beach stewards, and been through a lot of this. I sent 91 changes to be considered from the last draft. And when I think about negotiating, we've got commercial interests or private interests that we're deferring till phase 3. And I feel that some of that needs to be added in here to enable us to go forward with some of the things that have been suggested. So for instance, I would be hesitant to recommend restricting the public from having an umbrella until I knew what the hotels were going to be able to do with regards to an umbrella. There could be some agreement that says, hey, we'll only put umbrellas in this area based on an understanding that the private interests are going to have umbrellas in other areas or available to the public or what have you. So my concern is that by only throwing rules on the residents or the public and not being able to establish where things will be with the hotels, it makes it more difficult. I don't want to say that, especially now with so many places you can't get alcohol, I don't want to add more restrictions to the public with alcohol until I understand, can they freely get them at the hotels? So I want to add more of that if we could.
Understood. And I know you use those just as examples. With the umbrellas, cabanas, the only regulations that I believe are added are regulations related to tent size, which we can cover at the next meeting. And we do have a stronger enabling ability for the city to remove equipment left out overnight. So that's really it on that side. Alcohol, I don't believe we're changing or making anything stricter, at least on the public beach or the non-commercial beach. But we can go through those things, and I completely understand. And if we come out of the workshop with a laundry list of items to address, that's perfectly fine. That's what we want to have that workshop for. And I think this is just more, I'm trying to think of an example, because I do think this is really a pretty thorough ordinance that you've worked through over years. But if there's anything major that you would like to see discussed, customary use is an item we'll add in for the workshop. That's what we were hoping to get feedback on today. So now when you say that the commercial elements, those would be elements that were captured in the ordinance that were addressed earlier this year, not necessarily in the form that you would like them, but just that content should be brought forward. Is that?
Right, because I feel like it's a negotiation in a way, and you're asking the public to give up, what we're asking the public to do is all these new things that are added here, but the other piece isn't there, and it's like, will we ever get to it? I've been through a lot of these where we say, well, don't worry, we're going to do that later, and it never happens.
Okay.
And so the concern is we're going to, make life tougher for some people.
Okay.
It's not fair.
Well, if the committee's,
All the faith in your professional persistence that the topic
I'm
will
so-
not go away.
Can't always do it.
if it's appropriate for the committee, I think the best way to address that, even if we're not going to directly talk about that content, would be to have the commercial regulation that matches the non-commercial regulation. We can present that at the workshop, and we can just give what is the equivalent, so you can have that as kind of a bounds. Is that acceptable?
It certainly may help.
Okay.
But again, I'm just thinking that if we knew that the hotel said, oh, well, we're only going to be to here, then we could say, oh, well, then we'll be over there. And we just can't get that going at this point.
Okay.
And maybe I'm not saying it's the wrong thing. I'm just saying it had that difficulty.
Any comments?
We need to get busy.
Yeah.
If we're-
My only, and I believe the mayor said that, we have to think about what's the definition of commercial business.
Mhm.
And as you brought up, what's public and private, my is, let's be consistent that if we have private property and there is some version of commercial business being attained, that it's one approved by the landowner, as well as following the rules of the hotels and all that do it through a BTR. So you're just making sure that there's a mechanism to regulate commercial business that needs to be defined anywhere on the sandy beach.
Understood. Thank you.
I think number 2 on your slide was what's the process we want to go through in the workshop? I think, the easiest is you give us a draft. We can talk about red lines and things like that. I think you did a nice job of putting this together. Hey, what was it? What's it going to? And then line by line, I would say we can step back and say, okay, why is this here? What problem are we trying to solve? And then do we agree with that problem? Now, I'll speak for myself. I don't think we should get into the legalese of wording it. We should be, as a committee, talking about what problem we're trying to solve and allowing the legal team to do it in a way that it is, one, enforceable and will hold up. So I'm just, thinking about the process of it, just making sure that's how I would suggest we go through on the workshop. And then you would take that intent and then come back to us with a draft, and then we could do a final review. Does that feel good?
Well, I think,
From a process standpoint for the workshop.
well, since there is a draft here, though, and I do see, things that are put in Section 58, but not 95, that it's no longer illegal to sleep on lots M and N, that's being crossed out. Those kind of technical things, I think, are worth raising at some stage to go through.
In the workshop.
In the
Absolutely.
workshop,
Couldn't
exactly,
agree,
yeah.
couldn't agree more.
So not just
Yep.
telling legal what we want, but, since there is a draft,
But that's
commenting
what
on that
intents
draft.
are we trying to do, and then we can react to what has changed. I think it should be uniform across. There shouldn't have been something carved out, in my opinion, for M&N that's not applicable to the rest in these types of things.
Maybe because they didn't know if it was public or private.
you know, we're gonna
So
have
they
that.
listed it
Let's,
separately.
again, let's wait for the workshop.
Okay.
I know you're anxious. Any other? Okay, let's move to new item
B?
New item C. I think we added a letter.
Oh, yeah, it's now C. Sea turtles?
Sea turtle lighting.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the, if we could pull the PowerPoint, please. This is the second of two ordinances. This pertains to wildlife-friendly lighting as now defined by the state. This would be ordinance 2025-16, proposed for the second workshop. This reflects input from the Sea Turtle Conservancy. We have been working with them now for a couple of months. They're a partner with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. We have also received input from our local partners, not necessarily on the content of this ordinance, but early on, and we'll, continue to solicit and receive that input as we move forward. We have submitted what is in your packet to the Sea Turtle Conservancy. They're currently looking it over. I did speak with them late last week. It sounds like we're heading the right direction, but I don't have a markup yet. That might be available by the workshop. But they are looking this over. This is just a reiteration of what we presented at the workshop last month. We discussed our 2007 lighting ordinance with our local and state partners. The state underwent a review in 2022 related to any municipal or county ordinance that addressed wildlife lighting on the beach. Our ordinance was determined at the time to be somewhat ideal. That is the second highest category. Most ideal is those that hit a 75% coverage or more. We received a 15 out of 23.5 score for language and a 14 out of 26.5 score for implementation, enforcement effectively. That second measure was self-reported. It is a little bit outdated. We would get points today for increased use of social media and so on. But the language is really what we're focusing on here, although we do have content that will address the correct enforcement agency and penalties and so on. So our current wildlife lighting ordinance hasn't been updated since 2007, but it is based on a 1993 state model ordinance, and that ordinance has been iterative. It was updated majorly in 2020. There are actually some recommendations post-2020, new technical updates that have not been amended in yet, but those are best practices that we've received from the Sea Turtle Conservancy. State model lighting ordinance was updated in 2020. One of the more cutting-edge best practices is tint requirements. There was a study that actually came out this year that showed that 30% or less visible light transmittance is what really moves the needle. That is a statistically significant impact on preventing false turtle crawls. So that's really the standard we should be aiming for. 45% is what is currently in the model lighting ordinance. Many of the updates that we need are technical in nature. I do think that we have a strong framework. We have one that I think we can work within the bounds of Senate Bill 180 and really just focus on those technical updates, those maintenance updates. I don't necessarily tread into development-related items. Those include removal of outdated bulb types, like the bug-type bulbs, in favor of long wavelength requirements. The state has a repository of different fixtures and different bulb types that meet, if they're installed correctly, are wildlife friendly. Specifying visible light transmitted standard for windows, we just currently state that they need to be tinted. We don't specify the visible light transmittance, and as I mentioned, 30% appears to be the correct standard to go with. Mandating spectrometric test for newly installed lighting. We do have a spectrometer. We don't currently perform those tests. We use the cards, but the spectrometer is really the best way to make sure that the lighting is compliant. And that would be specifically for those fixtures that are not on the Fish and Wildlife Commission certified wildlife lighting list. They have vetted these fixtures. They have the ability to vet and lab test these fixtures to make sure that they comply and that they're turtle safe. It's really on the jurisdictions to make sure that they're installed correctly. We would still have to inspect them, but they've already done that work, and we have the ability to use their list for most fixtures. We do not currently have standards for pool lighting. That was one of the structures that they've requested that we add standards for, so we would be proposing that. requiring full cutoff fixtures, that's just new terminology. It's not mounted above a certain height. It's not mounted above a certain range. So that is regulating full cutoff fixtures. And standardizing what constitutes existing and new construction for compliance. We currently have that differentiation in our code between existing construction, new construction, but don't define what that is. Whether that be, obviously, new building, of course, would fall into new construction, but if an opening is widened, if there's new interior light sources that are exposed to the beach, those are the type of things that we need to work through and determine whether it falls into the existing or the new construction category. Same standards as for the first ordinance or same tasks as were requested for the first ordinance discussed today. We would like to move forward with a workshop. We want to address the workshop format section by section. It sounds like, again, it would be a more broad consensus on the items that should be included in this ordinance or things that need to be tweaked instead of, actual legal review, which we would go through subsequent to the workshop. If there's any appropriate content from this ordinance that has not been included, I will say, thankfully, with this ordinance, we did receive that input from the Sea Turtle Conservancy. I do believe what we have here captures most, if not all, of the content that they had asked us to address. But if you do feel there is other content we need to address through this ordinance, we'd be happy to discuss it at the workshop. And then, of course, if there are public comments, we'd be happy to receive them.
So as we did for the last topic, open up for public comment.
I'm going to wait for the workshop.
There will not be public comment in a workshop.
Correct.
This is your opportunity. Good to see you,
You're
Lisa.
allowed to take public comment in a workshop if you want to, in your discretion, so we could set it up that way if you'd like to. Seems,
I was under the impression that in workshops we haven't done that.
in the past we hadn't, but we did something similar for the noise ordinance where we did take public input during the workshops just to increase the amount of input we were getting.
Excuse us for 1 second. Are we comfortable with also allowing public comment at the workshops?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So you will also have, sorry, Lisa, I was under the impression from our past workshops that that wasn't happening, so I wasn't trying to, I wanted to give you an opportunity.
I just think
The clerk has a question.
Was the noise ordinance a public meeting, or was it a workshop?
We could go back and take a look, but I think the intent here is whatever we're going to call these is to allow for some public input.
Okay.
So we may have to change the title of what it's going to be. Maybe a public workshop, we'll find out what to call it.
And that would be for both the turtle lighting as well as the
Yeah.
other ordinance.
We'll open up with public comment and then go from there. So if you would still like to comment, please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
my name is Lisa Reich, and I'm in St. Petersburg now because I am not in my home on St. Pete Beach, but I am part of Coastal Wildlife Advocacy Group, and our focus is conservation on coastal wildlife, which includes sea turtles. And I have been actively involved in trying to get this lighting ordinance addressed. And I just want to express my gratitude to the city staff, Brandon, for all your work that you have done, the city manager. Oh, and you're back there too. Everybody's been wonderful. So I want to express my gratitude, and I look forward to the continuous forward momentum. So, and I appreciate all of you. And I'll look forward to the workshop.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For all your efforts, too. Thank you for all your efforts, too.
Any other comment for today?
Nope.
Let's open it up for us. Any?
Again, I like this. I mean, it's clear. There's redlining that's actually real redlining that shows you what's added and subtracted from the text rather than bulk changes. So I really, really appreciate that. Makes it a lot easier to understand what's being proposed. Maybe I didn't read it carefully enough, but I see the definition of tinting went from 45% to 30%. But in our old ordinance, I remember there was a section of like, here's what you have to do for new construction, here's what you have to do for existing. So I wasn't quite sure But I want to make sure that we do include consideration of, retrofits, and make sure that people, something we want retrofitted by a certain date, other things, just, it's just wait until you remodel.
Right. So the current ordinance, and this is part of the challenge, and speaking with the Sea Turtle Conservancy, this is one of the biggest challenges statewide, is that the exterior lights, it's easy to get compliance on. The interior lights is where there's a challenge, because if you don't have any kind of film, if the visible light transmitted is close to 100%, those interior lights are more difficult to control, especially when they could be across the street but still visible from the beach. As currently drafted, there are multiple options for whatever we define as existing construction. So any existing use where the windows haven't been changed out, or the exterior fixture is in place and is just being maintained, they have multiple options for compliance. They could put a sconce on. They don't necessarily need to change the bulb type. New construction, however we end up defining that will have to comply with the tinting requirements. So the other option could be to close the blinds at night or move the light fixture out of the window for existing. New would require compliance with the film. And it really comes down to how we define that. So I think we have quite a bit of leeway in our code. It's just coming up with what the appropriate threshold for requiring that film would be. I know one of the concerns that we've received is if you put the film on one window, it's going to look out of place with the other windows, but that's, we just have to figure out where that threshold's going to be. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just on that, we put in a few years ago new windows in our existing condo, and we had to show the specs of turtle glass before they would approve the permit and then close the permit. We had to show them documentation. So there is a process in place.
Since you're giving an example, I actually, in my house, put in 20% VLT.
Wow.
And I have to tell you what a horrendous mistake that was. It was depressing. And when you open your windows or doors, then the light would come in, because it was so little light. I would understand if some of these hotels do decide to go with the curtain method, or may want it, because it affects the way you feel in the room during the day. But I don't want to get into committee work, but since you raised it,
Yeah.
I was just highlighting there is a mechanism for existing homeowners for enforcement. Any other comments on this?
Good.
Is there a there's a lot of technical aspects to this, and I would say there's probably two options. If anybody has any individual questions of the science or the technology or the technical specs, we could potentially arrange a one-on-one with the Florida Wildlife or the FWC or Sea Turtle Conservancy, or if it's a broader interest, if we think we're going to have very specific questions, we could invite them to the workshop. I just want to make sure we don't get caught in what about this, what about that, but making sure that we have the tools available to us.
Sure. I was looking at the enforcement piece of it, and then the penalties. And, we can create all the rules we want, but at the end of the day, it don't do us any good if we can't enforce them and put some teeth behind enforcing them, right? So I'm wondering, does Sea Turtle Conservancy and/or other, beachfront municipalities, do we have like a best practices? You know where I'm going with that, so.
We do for new lighting. Their recommendation is something that's relatively easy for us to follow, because we inspect any kind of new windows going in or new building. Of course, I mean, there's building inspections. That's something that our code enforcement department does want to be involved with, and those inspections. It is a bit of a challenge for existing lighting compliance. Like I said, we use the cards, but going up to the back of the property to use a spectrometer in the middle of the night can be a little bit of a challenge. So and they recognize that as well. That's statewide.
I'm just anticipating what we're going to hear during some of the workshops, and we're going to have residents saying, well, how do we do this, or how do we enforce that, or how does Longboat Key or Anna Maria Island enforce there? So if we can have that ready to go and say, well, here's what St. Augustine Beach or here's what they did.
Yeah.
And those kind of best practices for actually making this thing work.
Yeah.
Right?
Good move.
Other practices.
I think that would be helpful and would go a long way. It's so easy to get caught up in the minutia of the technology but if you pull back and you look at, what are we really trying to do here? How do we do it? That's kind of where I'm going with that. So.
I mean, I saw a city where each night code enforcement would go out on the beach, and then the hotel would have to call individual rooms and say, close your curtains. And I feel for the people that have been, contacting code enforcement and going, well, when is this bulb going to change? Oh, you can see it, I can see it, I can see it. And my understanding from code enforcement was that the issue wasn't the rules, that there was some, I don't understand why they weren't getting enforced, for some of the yellow bulbs that were clearly in violation. But if this helps give some teeth to it, I think that is very important also. So that would be something.
So to make it easy for you, if we can look at Sea Turtle Conservancy and, beach-facing municipalities, not en masse, but just, directed, like, what are they doing? The best practices approach. That
I know Longboat did revisit theirs a couple years ago, and they're doing better now in terms of compliance.
I mean, why reinvent the wheel when we can borrow from our neighbors, right? Thank you.
And Longboat Key does have a code enforcement officer, I think, that did a tremendous amount of work that we might want to.
There you go. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
I just want to open back up to my question. Do we feel we need an expert to come in and explain the tinting and science and papers and all that, or are we?
How many workshops are we going to have?
This one might be doable in one. I mean, we could always bring an expert back in November if.
Yeah, if we get.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, if we have
the resources we need,
if we have interest in that area during the first workshop,
then we can bring it in.
Follow it up with, right?
Yeah, I like that.
Any other resources you may want? Okay.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, Brent.
All right. We are moving forward to original C but new D, updating on dune walkover replacement.
Thank you. Yes, so at the previous meeting, there were some questions about what the status was on replacing the walkovers, so I just wanted to give an update on that. The city has awarded a contract for design, permitting, and construction services for dune walkover replacements at 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 6th, 7th, 51st, and 52nd Avenues. The vendor selected for this work was Gulf Coast Construction in the amount of $439,000. This was funded through the city's CIP program, but we do also expect some reimbursements through FEMA. The 2nd Avenue boardwalk was damaged during Hurricane Idalia, and there's a FEMA project associated with that. 2nd Avenue with Hurricane Helene. 4th, 6th, and 7th were associated with Hurricane Idalia. So we do expect to recover a portion of those funds. Right now, the awarded vendor or purchase order has been issued, and they're under design, under the design phase right now, and our goal is to have permitting completed before the end of turtle season. That way we could get started on construction as soon as the turtle season ends.
Any public comment?
We do.
Hi,
Please
good
state
morning.
your name and address for the record.
Yeah, thanks. Kathleen Echegoyen, 106 Fifth Avenue, St. Pete Beach, so south end of Paso Grill. And I was wondering if we could add to this agenda the progress and plan for the wall, the beach wall that is under design. And my understanding is there is a temporary wall going up that's replacing the mesh wall, and then there will be a permanent wall. So that's my request, is that we have some sort of a progress report along with the walkovers. I have a second comment. I'm not sure if now is the time to make it or not. But in the, is that me? Okay. In the hopes of safety, I'm wondering if we can take a look at how we have our pedestrian walkways marked in Paso Grill. Specifically, there is a pedestrian walkway at 8th Avenue and Paso Grill Way going over to the bay. And I feel that we need to have a painted walkway at 8th Avenue going over to the beach where there will be a walkway. The ice cream shop is on 8th Avenue, the walkway is on the beach, and
There needs to be one there, you're
there
right.
needs to be a walkway there.
It's a crosswalk you're talking
A
about?
crosswalk,
Crosswalk.
doesn't
Yeah.
need to be flashing lights, but there
Right.
needs to be a crosswalk, and it needs to happen sooner rather than later. We've had a fatality there, as you know. But my general comment really is about crosswalks in general in Paso Grill. Many of the crosswalks that had once been painted are now faded because of the storm. First Avenue and Paso Grill Way, First Avenue and Gulf Way. And then the other intersection that's really important is where we just had the fatality, 21st, I think it is, Paso Grill Way, Vina Bridge. We have Shaner's, we have the bar, we have the bridge, we have the market. No crosswalks. I think that it would help. It would help for pedestrians. It would help for people with children. And I'm asking, I think this, I've talked to our new commissioner about it. I don't know if this is the committee, but this is where I'm bringing my request.
Is that a city thing or a county thing?
That would be a city.
Sorry?
A city.
A city thing.
Yes, sir.
So the city, Kathleen, thank you for your
Yes.
input. So the municipality goes to the county and says, here's what we want to do?
No, those are city local roads, so we would have the jurisdiction to
We've
stripe
got total
those.
control over whether we do or don't, and how we do it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Good.
I thought that was an interesting point, that just many of the lines just have faded.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's some program, maybe the cities, I mean, we have the luxury right now that Camden Mills is the right man, even though this may not be the right committee, to get like lines repainted.
Sure. Yeah, I can speak to each of these items. First, related to the Gulfway wall, as you stated, we do have a plan in place to install a temporary concrete barrier wall to hold us through the storm season. That should be installed here in the next few weeks. So as soon as I have a date on when that's confirmed, we'll share that. And then the plan, as you mentioned, for a permanent wall, that's associated with the capital improvement project we're proposing for next fiscal year. That project is actually a rehabilitation of Gulfway from First Avenue all the way to 22nd Avenue. So with that project, we would be looking at replacing damaged sidewalk and curb, as well as installing roadway base and new asphalt, as well as striping and signage, and then also installing a new permanent wall. Some of the design that we're evaluating right now for that permanent wall would have more of a foundation to it and a footer that would help prevent some of the wave action and uplifting forces that damage the existing wall that's there today. So the short term is to get a concrete barrier to help hold the sand in place, and then long term is that capital project that'll start in fiscal year 26. Regarding the pedestrian walkway at the 8th Avenue, I'll report that to staff so we can look into it. And specifically at First Avenue too, I think in those locations that are in the areas of where that upcoming project will be, we can get out there and install paint, and that'll hold us over until we can do the thermoplastic striping with the more permanent project. And then the 21st Avenue intersection, that is an intersection our commissioner has brought up as a concern, and our staff is working on addressing. Just recently, we restriped the painted stop bars at that intersection, but we think more work needs to be done. The southbound stop sign isn't very visible due to a tree, so we want to see either relocating that stop sign, potentially removing that tree, and then also exploring maybe adding some lighting to the stop sign just so it's more visible. As I understand, that used to be a lighted intersection back in the day and was signalized, but as much as we can do with pavement marking and signage just to make that more aware to drivers that is a four-way stop, that would help.
Any other public comment? Any comment on this item?
The walkovers in Pass-a-Grille, south of, say, 15th, you've got 3rd, 4th, 6th, 7th. There's some that are in place. The slope going up and coming down in some of those walkovers is excessive.
Yes, yes, sir. And that is
Walk
something.
them yourself?
Yeah, that's something we're aware of. And
The slope is part one, then part two is the drainage from the foot wash. Kind of runs down that slope and out to the sidewalk, and you get ponding water right there with the sand debris. So, two questions. Where are we in regards to the construction of these new walkovers? And secondly, why the excessive slope? I mean, that to me, it's dangerous.
yeah,
It's not. I mean, I've walked it several times, and if I'm about to fall, I mean, I'm not the healthiest guy in the world, but if I'm about to fall, I'm sure that others are feeling the same. So I'm wondering, where are we with that?
that's a great question. So the items, the walkovers mentioned in the agenda report, those are our priorities right now for full replacement, just because those aren't there. And fiscal year 26, we are proposing to change those walkovers, specifically at 12th and 16th. Those are two that come to mind that have that really steep slope, where we'd be proposing just to replace that section with maybe stairs or a switchback design, something that'd be a little bit easier to traverse with that. With the proposed walkovers that we are doing, we aren't proposing to have a steep slope like those other ones that were recently done.
Okay, good.
I mean, it might be nice if we could avoid stairs, although, I mean, it's not like people with wheelchairs really can navigate the beach that well. But, the county park is a great example where they've just done a really long ramp to avoid the...
Yeah, kind of a switchback scenario to kind of make up that change in elevation.
Any other comments?
I just, when I look at this list of numbers, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7th, then a gap to 51st and 52nd, and then nothing north. Is it that these are the ones that were damaged, or there really aren't that many other ones out there? Just to understand the dynamics of the beach, really.
The reason why these 7 were prioritized, 4th, 6th was one because of storm damage, and 51st and 52nd were ones that were previously programmed in the city CIP for replacement. I believe one of those was damaged from a vehicle that traversed over it. So that 51st and 52nd were just old capital projects, but moving forward, I think we need to have a reoccurring program of looking at these walkovers and having scheduled repairs and replacements.
What I was trying to understand also, though, is it because the nature of the dunes is different, that like we don't need that many between 7th and 51st and 52nd North, or is it just that there was just more damage? I mean, I'm just wondering.
They're just not as high a priority right now as the other ones, but we do need to look at all of them holistically.
They exist and they...
If you remember, I don't know how many meetings ago, there was a map that was provided to us with all of them.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I held... Okay. I don't know.
Of all the
crossovers.
city.
Yeah, city.
And in our proposed fiscal year 26 through 30 budget, we do have a specific CIP project for dune walkovers, and the idea with that is that would just be an annual program that remains a project, and we can use the funding from that to address as needed.
Thank you.
Any other comment? All right, I believe we already did the update, we moved that one up, so we're at adjournment.
I just wanted to make one comment, is that when we go to schedule these workshops, which I guess was going to be done by staff and Doodle or whatever, I'm going to have a personal issue in October perhaps that may keep me out of pocket. But I don't know that schedule, so I see some people tomorrow.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I just was wondering how the workshop scheduling would be happening and when it would be happening, because I just have some times that I may be a medical issue. So.
Right. We'll send out options.
And one item I would like to note, I do apologize for not reaching out to the committee ahead of time and asking for agenda items. That will be something we will be doing moving forward. On this case, we wanted to get it posted as quickly as possible so you guys could have time to read these ordinances, but moving forward, we will ask for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Camden.
If there's nothing else, can I motion to adjourn?
I'll move that we adjourn.
A second.
Roll call?
Member Thompson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kurzman?
Yes.
Member Rothenberger?
Yes.
Chair Stevens?
Yes.
Motion carries.